12th, 2025 at 4 p.m. on the Zoom platform and in person. This meeting will be recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website. I, Andrea Solomon, hereby call this meeting to order. We will start with the attendance of the commissioners. We won't have to take roll call on the votes after this, but we'll just do this for attendance purposes. So Christine Reynolds.
Here.
Gretchen Murbach.
Here.
Dave DeLong.
Here.
Solomon is here. So as we can just move on, I guess, to the next action item. So we'll do the review and approval of minutes. Does anyone have questions or clarification?
I have 2 typos.
Okay.
The first one is under the engineering port, which to me was 4. Engineering requests, the 3rd bullet down, parking lot rehabilitation. It's Kai's Road.
Huh, there you go.
And
Thank you.
and the next one's a little personal. Last page adjournment, my name is spelled wrong.
No,
Yeah, ROOR, it's a last, right under adjournment, Gretchen
where is this?
Robots, I don't know. ROBAC.
No, where,
Under adjournment page,
oh, yep, got it, thank you.
there you go. It was a little personal.
And the other one was personal too, because there's a Kai's.
Yeah.
And they spell their name K-Y-S, so yes. Good, Dave.
And I have one more suggestion, actually, ironically, in light of your corrections, which is I don't think the stellar team that puts these minutes together needs to confess to edit corrections when they misspelled something in future editions. Just my opinion. If you misspelled Thoreau or Collins, I don't think we need to note that in the minutes.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah.
you know, they don't
That
need
seems
to.
reasonable, yeah.
You do a great job putting them together.
Having gone to the session at the town hall
Yes.
and heard what other commissions do, I love these guys. They're my favorite people. It's like, okay, when you
Who's
take
they?
minutes and it's like the invisible people who put this, the DPW department. Who put these
And
together,
Linda.
give us all of our stuff.
Yes, thank Linda.
Thank you, Linda. I love you.
All right, do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor of accepting?
Aye.
All right, so we can move on to the review of the calendar.
Meetings.
Sure, I think just, I always like to give a little preview of the next meeting. And again, as you know, these are all tentative, to be determined, but in December, we look to start discussing warrant articles as a heads up. For the most part, they're gonna be fairly routine, but this is our opportunity to sort of highlight both the routine and non-routine for consideration. We'll then go through and start the annual town meeting process. We are also looking to provide an update on stormwater. And we are looking to generate our billing very shortly. We have some updates that we want to bring to the attention and procedural matters that we think might help, especially in the area of appeals and that sort of thing. So we'll be talking about that and getting your input, authorization on that. And then those are the 2 kind of high level. I will say it's not on the list, but I've had some back and forth with Andrea, and we've had some conversations with the school department on a potential meeting for the amenities appeal. That's on the wastewater side. That's likely gonna happen in December. It's really in their court to, give us notice, but we're working with staff on that. So those are 3 things that are anticipated for December meeting.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Do we have any public comments that are about topics not on the agenda?
The audience,
Did you have it? Okay, so we're
I
gonna,
see, I see Jeff Collins.
Yes.
Jeff?
all right, thank you, Jeff.
Great, thank you all. So I attended and appreciated the joint committee of traffic and safety meeting at the townhouse. One comment I made there, and I'd reiterate to the commission and hope you follow up on, is feeling that statistics around safety and changes being made in town were nested as pedestrian and bike or ped and bike needs. And I think those are two very different user groups in terms of how people move through our transportation system, the interventions we may need to increase safety for those users, and how we might track that. So I'd request and encourage commission and staff to separate out those elements and you know, the analysis reflect that. But if I could spend another minute, I had questions and concerns about the Main Street and Baker Ave intersection, what's currently in I think it's titled a proposed draft final plan. I had a chance to look at those plans online and immediately had concerns that there wasn't a lot of room for bike passage there. 2-foot shoulders on Main Street in both directions. And as you can imagine, as a cyclist coming from Route 2 west into West Concord, you're coming down past Concord Green and the TD Bank. And that design had a sizable painted median and two 11-foot lanes with 2-foot shoulders. So the function, you know, the experience as a cyclist would be coming downhill and really needing to merge all of a sudden with cars going 30, 35 miles an hour. And the design creates a lane, a kind of a situation that's analogous to the bridge crossing the Assabet River with very, very narrow lanes, very narrow shoulders. And that's probably the, you know, we could all identify as kind of a really bad geometry on that bridge. So I expressed these concerns to Justin Richardson. He generously invited me and a friend to come in and talk about this and gave us quite a bit of time to explain the constraints at that intersection and offered to talk with the engineers about the possibility of making wider shoulders on Main Street, which I think would make a huge difference for cyclists. That's a specific example, but my broader concern is the application of the Complete Streets policy and understanding how and whether it was applied to this intersection design. And that policy includes language that the core commitment is that these complete street design recommendations shall be incorporated into all publicly and privately funding projects in all phases. And I'm struggling to see how honest consideration of cyclists moving along Main Street was incorporated into that design. So I'd encourage the commission when reviewing designs and of course staff to really lean into that complete streets commitment. And then in offering Justin responding to, you know, he passed these concerns along to the design consultants. He said, ultimately, the design consultants are going to stamp this. And, you know, if it's non-standard, they might not be comfortable stamping wider shoulders, et cetera. A second request to the commission is that I'm sure most of our roadways are going to be non-standard in different ways, and that we not immediately dismiss, you know, road real estate for cyclists because it's non-standard. I think, you know, we're very rarely going to have room for sort of standard designs. So those are the two requests: separating bike ped statistics and how we're tracking interventions for those user groups, and then leaning into the Complete Streets policy and hopefully integrating these requests into the Baker and Main design. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Are there any other?
No other hands. Yeah.
Oh, Linda, how about?
Should I come up?
Yes.
Your choice. Yeah, you can. Yeah, just 2 minutes and yeah, just.
I just wanted to say that we had a ride with Dr. Firth around town, who'll be giving a talk on November 20th about pedestrian and bike safety, specifically bike safety, because he doesn't have a lot of time, but he's a civil engineer at Northeastern and an expert in this area. And I really appreciate the Public Works agreeing to meet with him and just having a conversation about it and kind of leveraging his expertise. He did mention at one point to me that he has students that if we needed somebody to work on a project on the side, if Steve needed extra hands on something, that potentially he could work something out. And I also wanted to thank Alan. I know that you and I haven't done it yet, but we were gonna do a ride too. I just want to put it on the public record that, you know, Public Works is actually working pretty hard on this, and Mothers Out Front and other groups are really appreciative. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. All right,
Great, I think we're.
great.
that's-
Okay, all
that's it,
set.
yeah.
Any commissioner comments? I don't have any this week. No. Okay. All right, onward to winter maintenance and snow response.
Okay, I'm going to invite Eric Shaw up to the table. Eric is our Assistant Highway Ground Superintendent to provide, this is sort of our annual update, not just for the commission, but for the community, to sort of identify what our winter maintenance program is, sort of offer it's a $600,000 plus or minus investment over the course of the winter, has an impact on the entire community. So, with that said, Eric, if you can kind of give us the overview, I'm gonna try and bring up the presentation here. My hands on it. Got a bunch of presentations here, so give me 1 second. Here we go. This will work. All right, excellent. So.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Alan said, I'm Eric Shaw, Assistant Highway and Ground Superintendent. I work with Aaron McCloskey, Superintendent. For all things highway and grounds, specifically for winter maintenance as well. As part of our team, we also have Tim Jones, who's the operations manager, and the three of us are sort of the kind of the three key leaders for the winter operations in town. Just want to kind of start out by talking about our mission statement. Just kind of read it to you. To maintain a level of service that keeps Concord Street system, which includes sidewalks and parking lots, passable for safe pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Especially for emergency vehicles such as fire, police, ambulance, or any other vital service, as much of the time as possible within the limitations imposed by the extremes of nature and the resources we have available. Part of our priorities kind of list is includes public safety, employee safety, being efficient in our operation, fiscal responsibility, as well as sustainability. Just some statistics on what we maintain out here in the public way. We maintain 107 miles of public roadway, as well as 4 miles of private roadways, 44 miles of sidewalk, and 12 municipal parking lots. Going back to last winter for the 2024-25 winter season, our first event occurred on December 4th of 2024 with very trace amount of snow, but still resulted in a 14-hour operation. Wow. And forced us to use 216 tons of road salt, as well as full CPW employment at a cost of $24,308.64. Our largest event of the winter was a 6-inch accumulation on February 8th. That resulted in a 13-hour operation. Our de-icing efforts included 238 tons of road salt and a full plowing operation. We had the entire CPW staff here as well as the contractors. And that storm cost us $64,000 and $38.17.
Can I just ask a question? How come when you actually had a plow, it was a shorter operation than when you didn't have to plow?
So as with every weather event, it certainly can be different, depending on the timing. Sometimes you think the amount of snow means it's, more work. It's not always the case.
Okay,
You sometimes even just a trace amount of accumulation, if it's long duration, it could be snowing for hours and not really accumulating. Or if we could get a 6-inch dump in a short amount of time and we can scrape it up, plow and go home.
okay.
The slickness of the roads or the most and sidewalks are really what drive it, whether it's from lots of snow or a little bit of freezing rain.
A lot of variables out there that we work around that affect the
Okay.
timing.
Yeah.
So for the entire season last year, we responded to 14 winter weather events. Not including, in addition to that, we did a snow removal operation downtown. One time that involves removing snow banks from the sidewalks and the business areas in West Concord and downtown Concord, Thoreau Depot. Total accumulation for the season is 29.5 inches. Our CPW staff overtime hours were 3,149.5. Our contracted equipment hours were 855.5. We used 2,768 tons of road salt for a total cost of $663,568.64.
What was the budget for?
We budget $600,000 a year
Mhm.
is sort of the standing budget.
Okay, so you're a little over.
Yeah.
That's cool. And in terms of manpower, so the level of, when it says contracted equipment hours, that's hiring people to ride to, them and their
Supplement.
truck, or is it?
The
So-
contract.
Correct, yeah. So we have about a dozen contractors or so annually that, in addition to our staff, we have heavier snow events that assist, for snow plowing, pretty much snow plowing only. We don't have them treat, or we do all the
Just the
salt
snow plowing.
and sanding
And
in-house.
is that a higher cost than what it would cost you to do using your DPW staff?
So their hourly rates are higher,
Yeah.
but they're also providing their own equipment to do that.
Okay,
And that's a big issue as far as the volume of equipment we have, which is a lot. It would be even more if we had to manage peak snow
right,
demands.
okay. And manpower availability, so you see ads for plow drivers
Mhm.
on your little screens around town
Sure.
sometimes. Is that something that's a constant issue where you're trying to get manpower?
It is, we certainly could use more contractors, throughout the season. We have, for most events, we have enough, but sometimes it can be a stretch. We start getting, larger snow events, over a foot, and long duration storms, especially, guys get, tired if they're here for, 48, 50 hours.
Sure.
Certainly having more contracted resources would be ideal, but we're always able to kind of make do and get through it as we need to.
It's very, very competitive, and it's very important that contractors who sign up are expecting that they're going to be utilized. And so there really is a balance of ensuring that you're providing them with an opportunity as part of their livelihood. If not, and you're just continually using them very sparingly, you're not gonna retain them and they're gonna go elsewhere. So it's always a bit of a, kind of art and science as far as getting the right contractors and supplementing, what we have for kind of work hours.
And I believe we even raised our rates this year to be competitive with like the DOT and the state rates. So that we could try to attract more, because we had a long-time contractor that, we lost a loader and a couple pieces of equipment from him this year because he retired. So trying to make that up, we've had to be more competitive to try to get new contractors in here to replace them.
Are there any performance metrics? I'm not even sure, do you have anything you sort of say, we want the streets cleaned by a certain time? Is there anything that you sort of said as a baseline?
Part of the policies, and Eric might touch on, and we'll kind of, depend on the presentation, sort of when we respond,
That's all part of our
yeah.
operations plan.
Yeah,
Acton's got signs up on all their roads, like lighted signs, Yeah. you can't go anywhere else.
That's right.
Yeah. Acton's really, I don't know if they're just desperately seeking plow.
well, this is sort of the cycles of
Yeah.
who knows how their contractors were handled in the past, if
Yeah.
they weren't called and committed,
Right.
so, yeah, it's competitive.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll get into talking a little bit about our planning and operations management, as well as our fleet maintenance and our treatment and plowing techniques. As part of planning, we talk a lot about safety, employee training, procurement, and communication. Through our operations management process, we do a lot of what's called route optimization. That basically means looking at all our plow routes and all of the processes of our snow operation so that we can become more efficient year after year. Sometimes we have reviews after every large storm, just to try to always kind of get better at what we're doing out there. Tracking is an important part of it for us, not just salt usage, but timing, efficiency, and those things. Forecasting, we're always working on forecasting, looking at new technology, And the methods for, sort of dialing the forecast from, all the many outlets that are out there for weather, forecasting. And response strategies, always looking at, what's the right mix of staff and resources for every storm. It's always a little bit different, so we're constantly adjusting for those things, and we'll get into more details on this stuff. Fleet maintenance, it's a big part of our winter preparations. We start in the summertime with equipment, getting things ready. These trucks are large and, expensive, but winter is very hard on them, and it takes a lot of effort to keep them in good working order. So we have a whole process for repairs and inspections that we follow pretty regularly. And then we'll get into sort of the treatment and plowing aspects with, pre-treatment, plowing during the storm, removal and de-icing post-storm. So as I mentioned, planning starts during the summer season. Essentially, when the new budget year hits, we start looking at the procurement side of things, especially contractors. We do reach out early in the year to start thinking about if we need new or more contractors to assist us for the operations. There's other procurement needs such as supplies for road salt. There is like a state MOU process that we have to go through to renew the state salt contract every year. And then purchases for equipment parts, certainly things like plow blades, any additional pieces of equipment that might become part of the plow fleet. We want to start that procurement process early so that we can have them ready for winter. So route review, we talked about the route optimization a little bit. Again, we focus on efficiency, and we spend a lot of time in the summer months identifying road hazards out there. If there's loose manhole covers, or if there's new construction where they've added curbing or sidewalks or things that weren't there from the previous winter, we make sure employees review that through the summer months. Vehicle assignments, we go through a whole list. Every plow route has specific vehicles assigned to it, and we go through and revisit that every year. Say, is this the best truck, or is this the best combination of trucks for any particular route? And as I mentioned, changes on the roadway, construction, developments, or new installations. It's also a multi-department coordination effort for the winter operation. It's not just highway and grounds staff that are out there in town vehicles. So we have operators from CMLP as part of our town fleet, some folks from the facilities department, as well as water and sewer provides a few operators for us. A lot of coordination with public safety, certainly with vehicles being parked in the roadway or left overnight in parking lots, as well as they assist us with traffic during snow removal operations during the overnights. And then also the school department, we want to make sure that we try to plan our end of storm approaches in a certain way that's beneficial to school happening, and certainly making sure that roadways and sidewalks are especially given a lot of attention to in the school neighborhoods.
And Eric, I'll insert, we also have, and with the advent of Zoom and Teams, we'll do department meeting before a storm, so we know it's coming, so that we can coordinate and understand are any special activities, anything going on over a weekend, if it's a weekend event. So they get kind of real-time updates from Public Works as far as what's our response, what are we anticipating. And I will say, Eric, Tim, Aaron are always watching the weather, because it changes and it's dynamic. But when a big storm comes and people start getting anxious, we're likely going to have a meeting before the storm, so we can walk people through kind of what are we hearing, what are we paying attention to. And that's been very helpful, just interdepartmentally, to kind of coordinate things. And whether it's the library, schools, council on aging, that sort of thing, they all participate.
What's the connection with the schools? If there are particularly these storms where it's maybe yes, maybe no about canceling.
It's literally up until the 11th hour, and Eric, maybe you can talk kind of the real time.
Yeah, so
communication.
we don't generally advise schools on whether or not to cancel or anything like that. We'll sort of present what we think are the current road conditions.
Yeah.
And we'll give a status report as far as, we might say, okay, roads are all plowed and treated and sidewalks are in process. And, we expect to be, fully plowed at a certain point or whatever the status is. Try to give them enough information to say, okay, maybe we should have school today, or maybe we shouldn't.
At Concord Academy, we wouldn't, if we knew we were gonna close the next day, we wouldn't tell the kids till after study hall, so we didn't have
Yeah,
mayhem.
right.
Except we tell them at like 10 o'clock at night when it's like bedtime, like, oh, by the way, you can sleep in tomorrow. And they're like, man, all night working on paper. I'm like, exactly.
Getting ahead.
Can I ask one other question? I guess this is under route review. There's been some talk in the last couple of meetings, particularly because of Upland Road around speed bumps. And I don't know whether whether speed bumps exist in this town, whether there are speed bumps, and whether the department has a position on speed bumps as being problematic from a winter maintenance standpoint.
So the answer is we don't have speed bumps in town at this point in time, certainly being contemplated. As far as the position, it's sort of generally known that depending on the speed bump, they come in all shapes and sizes. They introduce different, kind of challenges, not all insurmountable, but they just need to be sort of factored in and considered. And some communities use them seasonally and they remove them. Some have learned the hard way of one design doesn't work and they've reconfigured, but we're not there other than just paying attention to the industry. As far as the position, no, I think what we need to do is like anything, if there's a service and expectation, we just need to adapt to it. If it takes more time, energy, effort, we need to account for it. But that's basically, I think, where we stand at this point.
Thanks.
The last aspect of our planning is employee training. We have a program that's run through the University of Massachusetts called Bay State Roads. They have a multitude of courses throughout the year on, anything related to snow operations, maintenance, from forecasting to equipment operation to different uses of salt and other anti-icing chemicals and things like that that are available. So the staff gets a lot of training with that stuff. And then we also hold a winter maintenance operations team meeting annually. For everybody within Public Works, as well as the CMLP folks and other folks that assist as part of the operations team. We have a joint meeting where we discuss, procedures, expectations, and protocols for being part of the snow removal team for the season. And then we have a few pictures here of sort of our planning process. So in the upper left there, you can see our salt shed. As winter approaches around this time of year, even a little earlier, we start taking loads of salt at the salt shed. We have about a 2,000 ton capacity. We will fill that completely before right around October 15th. And off to the side, you can't really see it, but there's a whole nother area over there where we store an additional 300 tons under a tarp. It's kind of our break glass in case of emergency. We have used it. I've been in town 6 years. We've probably used it 3 times out of that. This long duration ice storms, we will burn through that entire shed, as well as get into that emergency pile.
One of the considerations when we're talking about land use and sort of the needs for public works that are a little bit different, it's not always, people think of the office and kitchens and bathrooms, but public works, it's these sorts of areas that are very sensitive. And one of the challenges is always sort of trying to stay ahead of it. And you never know when you're gonna have a multi-day, storm event. And even with the storm events, the nature of what we really see, and I've learned, is it's the thawing and refreezing, thawing, refreezing. So it's not particularly extreme winter weather. It might almost seem unseasonably warm, but then at night it freezes and those flash freezing occurs. So that's where, really having to be judicious with kind of having the materials available is, important.
And then the other 2 slides are just showing us, setting up equipment seasonally. Certainly a lot of our salting equipment gets mounted in the back of trucks, and we store them offsite up, sometimes up at the composting facility. And every spring we remove them, and every fall we put them back on the trucks to get ready for the winter season.
And that dual use of the equipment, again, a part of the efficiency.
So our operations team consists of 27 equipment operators, which are primarily CMLP, or highway and grounds employees, combination of CMOP, water, sewer, and facilities. We have 16 equipment operators, with contracted resources. We have a snow dispatcher. Tish Hopkins has been over there for a lot of years. She still runs that. And we have 2 administrative assistants that will field calls usually during the day after the storms, during regular business hours. We have a fleet supervisor and 2 master mechanics, and then, as I mentioned, 3 supervisors, Aaron, myself, and Tim Jones. We have 22 snow plowing routes, all public roadways in Concord, no state highways. We do have some private roads which met criteria that were set at town meeting back in May of 1964. We have a special route just for those roads. Sidewalks in the business districts and school areas are the primary plowing routes for the sidewalk equipment. And then the public parking lots. We also have 13 de-icing routes. So in the event that we don't have any plowable snow, there's specific routes where that get broken out from the plowing routes to consolidate equipment and focus only on de-icing and salt treatment.
Eric, on the sidewalks, and we're gonna have to go through some of these slides a little quicker, but the sidewalk, there's a policy and we actually included it in the packet. It's very important because everybody would like, once you're done with the road, they're out and about now, when are you gonna get to my sidewalk? And we have to be very deliberate as far as what sidewalks are part of what the town will maintain. And you can go across the Commonwealth, everybody has different approaches on, who is responsible for sidewalks, but we do have equipment, we do take care of the sidewalks in the downtown areas, around the schools. But that policy is very important because inevitably someone who is not included is going to be making, their voice heard, well, why not me? And I demand to talk to somebody. And so that's why we kind of clearly define that and work through the Public Works Commission. So as a matter of policy, practice, you should be kind of aware of that. But again, this is something that's evolved over time, but Eric, I'm gonna say if you can kind of move through these,
Sure.
I think it'd be helpful, yeah.
So as we mentioned, part of our operations planning involves a continuous monitoring of weather and forecasted conditions. We're always making adjustments as the initial forecasts come out ahead of a prospective snow event. And then we utilize our road weather information system to kind of give us some data as we lead up to the storm and prepare for the storm. Communication with employees. We have a lot of communication before a storm event, letting staff know, hey, there's a storm coming. We don't know what it's going to materialize as at this point, but be ready to either be available overnight, through the weekend, whatever it might be, depending on the anticipated forecast. We're doing townwide inspections to monitor the weather conditions. Certainly, if it's been very cold for a few days ahead of a snow event, we want to know that, okay, well, it's been, the road temperature's been below freezing in most of the town, even though it's going to be on the warmer side as the storm approaches, knowing that the ground's going to cause things to freeze, even if the air temperature is, right around 32 degrees or even above. Allocating resources and equipment tracking. Again, just more adjustments that we make throughout the planning process and the operational needs, just to kind of make sure we have the right equipment in the right places as the storm approaches. And if there's anything out of service, any vehicles that are broken down, or any potential pieces of equipment that don't have an operator, if somebody's out sick or we can't fill it for any reason, we know where the spare equipment is. Communication is important for us during the operation. We're constantly having communication between operators, the snow desk, and to the supervisors. During a storm, obviously, there's CPW equipment out on the roadways, reporting back to the snow desk where they are plowing or where they are treating, when their routes are done, plowing, ready for salting. And then they're communicating back to the supervisors so they can go and inspect those areas post-storm before we send everybody home for the evening. We're also monitoring radios and communications with other departments during the storm to be aware of other things that are happening on the roadways as snow is falling or the storm is ending. And again, some more pictures, just some of the things we encountered during snow events. We have some narrow sidewalk areas that require, scooping and removing. From this picture here, certainly with heavy snow loads, we get trees snapping during storms. And then just some other pictures with the sidewalk operator and, the sander being loaded down here. Our winter fleet consists of 39 plow vehicles, combination of heavy and medium duty plow trucks, wing plows, front plows, belly scrapers, which is a plow underneath the body of some vehicles. We have loaders and backhoes, salt spreaders that have ground speed controllers, so the amount of salt being applied to the roadway adjusts as the speed of the vehicle changes. We have 3 sidewalk plows and 2 brine trucks, for spraying liquid salt on roadways in certain weather events. Cleaning of our equipment is super important. As we know, these vehicles are expensive and salt is obviously very corrosive to metal, and we clean them a lot. We wash them as much as we can after every salt event. Sometimes you drive through the yard, it may not look like it, but these things do get a lot of cleaning, a lot of washing. And it's not just soap and water. We have desalinization chemicals that we use to try to neutralize the salt on the metal, but it still takes its toll.
Another factor of kind of the resources and ideal operations, we're not really set up for this kind of, maintenance of equipment. If we had new facilities or different facilities, we'd get more, more state of the art, cleaning, configurations.
And then with our fleet, we do a lot of inspections of the equipment, pre and post storm. We're always calibrating the spreaders during the season to make sure they are still putting out the salt at a correct rate. And we always have a fleet mechanic on duty during all storms. Smaller storms, we probably have 1 mechanic. A larger storm, we're gonna have all 3 of them here. There's some pictures of some of our fleet equipment, just for awareness. This is what we call like a medium duty truck. That's an F-550 with a 9-foot plow. And our larger wing plow combination truck, up in the upper right corner. And this our sanders that go on the swap loader trucks, and then our salt brine applicator and sidewalk plow with the snow blower. We also utilize what's called a roadway weather information system, or ARWIS. We have sort of 2 components to it. Our most useful tool is we have 7 cameras essentially mounted in different parts of town that give us not just real-time pictures of what the roadway looks like if we're not here in town, but also road temperature, air temperature, and other types of weather data that we can monitor when we're not in town, especially overnights and on the weekends. It's very helpful, as a lot of us don't live in town. And it's very helpful for our storm planning, especially on those weather events that if it's a squall passing through in the night, or, even just freezing conditions. If it's been wet roadways all day and we're not sure if it's gonna freeze at night, we can monitor the cameras through the night remotely and make sure that's happening. We also have a contracted weather service that provides us sort of a real-time updates with continuous weather reports as we're planning our snow response. If the forecast changes and we're planning for 4 to 8, at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, and it changes to 12 to 16 by Wednesday afternoon, we have a service that's monitoring that for us and giving us the data to try to make adjustments. And this also helps us as far as what to do in the storm. So if we're trying to determine how much salt we need to use, or maybe we even use brine instead of salt, having this data from this ARWIS system is super important, because certain combinations of salt are gonna work better at lower temperatures, or we may have to mix in other chemicals to aid the salt if it's going to be even colder. And if it's gonna be on the warmer side, maybe we don't salt at all. And that's been the biggest help of this technology, is when some towns, and we've seen it happen, where they've got salt spread everywhere and we don't, because we knew the temperature was gonna do a certain thing. Ultimately.
Eric, you got, just a few minutes and
Sure.
we'll wrap up.
Again, treatment and plowing. Our storm response techniques depend on certain conditions. Pre-treatment happens almost on every weather event. It's certainly, we want to make sure that we don't have any snow and ice bonding to the roadway, which if you've ever been on a roadway where it's snowed and vehicles start driving on it, it sticks and it can be hard to come up. Plowing operations, we'll go into a full plowing operation right around 2 inches of snow. Sometimes less if we know it's not gonna snow anymore. And we know that we can do a quick scrape and apply a little less salt. We'll do that even if it's less than 2 inches. Snow removal from parking lot also happens at 2 inches. And then removal from intersections, crosswalks, to improve visibility when we have like high bankings and things like that will happen. The full snow removal operation that we talked about, that includes, removing snow from the parking areas and sidewalks or in the downtown business areas. Kind of one of the more expensive aspects of winter, when it comes to sort of a decision, do we need to do this or do we not? The average cost is about $15,000 every time we pull that lever, so it's not a small decision for us. We know it's expensive, but we also have to consider, people getting in and out of their cars when they're parked along the roadway, so we communicate, I believe, with the town manager's office, when there's a question if that is a need. Snow storage, we have two snow storage facilities, the compost site on Walden Street, as well as the MCI property. In the past, we had worked with the prison on that, but I think we do that through DCAM now. We
Which
also,
may be changing at some point with all the configuration of MCI. Again, it also speaks to the landfill compost site as far as such an important asset for one of the areas that we can actually bring snow or storm debris. But that's kind of a topical issue.
and then on occasion, we do have the ability to remove snow from the Doug White field as well as the high school field. We got an early snowstorm that needed to be removed for athletic purposes. We can do that. It has happened. And we also do the ADA accessible pass through Emerson and Rideout Park. And then some more equipment pictures and kind of some of our post-storm operations
Right.
pictures there, but that's us plowing off Doug White Field and we go to high school field. And that's basically it.
Your last bullet, you didn't touch on about hydrant accessibility. I have a hydrant in front of my house. My neighbor informed me that it's my job to keep that clean and open it up. Is that true?
It can only help, right?
I mean, I do.
Yeah, yeah. So
But I
we
mean, if I
strongly,
don't do it, he comes over and he goes,
that's good.
I-
We strongly encourage it. We have, is it 5,400? I don't know how many hydrants,
Wow.
in town, so, we'll prioritize areas in the downtown, but when you get sort of out into the, sort of more, rural areas, it's just a matter of time. And oftentimes, it's a lot to get the hydrants, but when you look at the roads first, then the sidewalks, and eventually the hydrants, it's just a question of, being
I'll keep
mostly
doing it.
efficient.
I don't
Yeah,
wanna
keep
get-
doing
I
it.
don't wanna get
And the other thing we like to say is, if that hydrant is near you, that hydrant is your hydrant, it's gonna protect you like you most need it.
My neighbors.
So,
I have seen the fire department helping.
and the fire department also helps as well,
They
yeah.
do some of them.
Okay, so good job. Sounds like a very
Yeah.
thorough
Very
plan.
thorough.
Is there anything that you're worried about as you
Yeah.
look into the winter?
Yeah.
No, I think it's, the highlight is really that we just can't predict the weather. I think we have a very fine-tuned program. I think that comes through. Using technology, since I've been in Concord, just the weather stations are really important. Just the expectations of the community, knowing downtown, there's always some pressure where, people, why aren't you doing an overnight, response? Cause it's very expensive. And these are sorts of things we need to be mindful of when the town talks about, when we wanna be, what are the needs versus nice tos?
Yeah.
And, the reality is it's always about safety and that's sort of the primary focus. No, I think it's more just being aware that it is very thoughtful, very deliberate, very strategic. And Chris, you'll always say, well, what metric are we using with others? What I like to hear oftentimes is the anecdotal, I had a hard time getting into Concord. When I got here, it was great. And I hear that a lot, so.
Yeah, there's a hear consistent compliments on how quickly the roads are cleared and how safe they are to pass. Pretty quickly after a storm, and it speaks to how hard everyone works, that they're staying overnight. I mean, I know you guys have been here 2 and 3 days in a row. It's a lot of work that goes into a very short amount of time.
Yeah, when we talk about space needs for public works, which is also very topical, if you have the tour, the crews are sleeping in the trucks, in
Yeah.
a break room, you know, in nooks, and, you know, there's really we don't have the accommodations for that kind of operation. So again, these are, as I've told people, we adapt to what we have, but really it's not, you know, optimal when you're talking about extended, you know, responses for any storm event.
Is there any trend, or I'm sure you have statistics somewhere, so, well, last year you spent 600 something thousand on, is there any plot, you know, looking?
Yeah,
at
we
the
track it
numbers
year after
over,
year, yeah.
And that plot is consistent, is it going up slowly with inflation? Obviously, some weathered years would vary, cause it to vary, but,
This is supposed to be a snowy winter.
yeah. But I mean, I'm just curious if there's any.
No,
you
other
see
than
or
tracking it and being very strategic, I'm not sure we've seen it, you know, I'm not sure if you've seen a trend per se as far as
I
the
think
winter.
We keep an eye on like obviously the sort of variable costs of, we know that like labor is becoming more expensive and materials are becoming more expensive. The real big costs have been with equipment, like especially, you know, sort of larger purchases like our, you know, frontline heavy duty trucks. The cost of those, replacing those trucks is tremendous over what it was even 5 years ago. So those are the biggest costs I think that affect us, not so much year over year, but as far as the overall cost of the snow operation.
Well, thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.
Really informative. Thanks.
Okay,
a lot.
thanks, Eric.
Thanks.
Okay, we're gonna move on to D4, which is the Dover Darton petition for temporary repairs in a private way. And I think that's Stephen's. thing.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Steve Dukran, why don't you kind of come up? What I'd like to do is, this has been an ongoing process. I'd like to provide a brief overview and staff. We've actually had a petition that goes back to 2024 that we've been working on. And in essence, the long story short is the original proposal. This is a bylaw that allows the Public Works Commission to authorize work to be done on private ways within the White Pond watershed.
So what are we being asked?
Yeah, so you're gonna be asked to sort of support this initiative. And we've been here before, we talked a lot about the background, but what I wanna do is say that this has been an iterative process and that petitioners identified a need and a problem. The spokesperson, I see, Jim Whalen is in the audience, who sort of started this initiative, but working with the butters at the time. There's been a lot of discussion as far as what's the best, you know, long-term design for two things. Condition of the road, which is interestingly enough, the primary driver for this bylaw. Private ways that are deteriorating and need a group of abutters to sort of work together. The bylaw allows them to make a petition to Public Works. It can get vetted with the understanding that any improvement would be at the cost of those abutters. However, Public Works would become the project manager. Make sure the work is designed and constructed appropriately. And, you know, work with the abutters on the schedule and details. The original petition included an interesting element of a stormwater challenge, which was discussed at length. Was understood during that process that the stormwater situation impacted a fairly large area, not just the direct abutters. The stormwater solution was not necessarily what we would consider sort of conventional or standard because of limitations that the abutters had with just what can we do with the very limited area we have to, you know, work with. So working with the commission and staff and getting some ARPA funds to allow for some more involved and creative design work, we've gone through an iterative process to come up with a project that will address the stormwater situation designed for a 10-year storm event, which is pretty good. The original plan was a 2-year, which meant it could be surcharging fairly frequently. We went back for the 25-year storm, which was determined to be, yes, good design, but very expensive, and the abutters were, you know, concerned about the cost. I think of the total about $350,000. to be apportioned over 13 property owners, and they said, can you look at something in between? We've done that. We've had a couple meetings with the neighborhood and direct abutters. We've come to a design which was included, we'll say the Whalens circled back with us to talk about, can we clean up the petition? So it's, you know, it's now, there's two years dated. Some property owners had changed, the design had changed. We said, yeah, if you want to just keep it clean. So they sort of resubmitted a clean petition with signatures from a majority of the abutters. And there's a few issues that I think are worth talking about as far as the details go and how to proceed that I'd like to spend time with. But as far as the design and sort of the road work, stormwater, which are kind of more engineering issues, I don't know if you're interested in having much conversation about that, or, you know, Jim, if you want to add anything to what I've described as far as the background, but it's more the technical side of things.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay,
Are we deciding something? Are we voting on?
yeah,
that?
you'll be making a decision to advance this process. I'm gonna talk to about what the next steps will entail,
Okay,
okay?
okay.
Because the Public Works Commission is the authority that, you know, because we do this sort of work, to make, to advance. Now, in this case, there's going to be a need for a signature from the town to add to the petition. The reason is the town has a property that
Yes.
abuts the work. We've talked with council, and we've also done some work statewide to find out that it's very common if the town has property rights that abut, you know, are part of this, that they can participate in the project, meaning sign on to this work and pay for its cost of the improvement.
And if the petition goes forward,
Yeah,
then what, is that authorizing?
that's what you will be doing, authorizing, saying we received a petition.
Yeah.
Details are in the petition. I provided a
Yeah.
memo that provided some context. So the next steps would be that we've got 60% of abutters signing on to this plan of work. The proposal is that there will be a borrowing request at town meeting to help fund this, so the town becomes part of the financial arm of making this project work. So with the approval of the Public Works Commission, we would work with council to finalize what that betterment agreement would look like. The understanding is it's the total cost of this project, which is $189,000, divided equitably by all the property owners, abutters, to a probable cost of about $15,000 per property.
Does that include the borrowing cost?
It would include all costs for the project once it's been
Interest
greenlighted.
included, right?
That's right, that's right.
No,
No?
The borrowing cost?
so
It could, right?
we'll borrow, well, we don't know how it's gonna be bonded.
Right.
It's 5%, 10%,
Right.
so. So it'll be the cost of the project. And then, which the town will fund up front. And then the betterment charge, no, will include the borrowing.
Yes.
Okay, that's. what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
it'll be covered.
Yeah, it'll be
Yes.
covered, that's all. I'm
Yes.
looking
And the issue is over time, whether it's, I think it's a 10-year term is what we're talking about. Now, in the past, some abutters may opt to just, if they sell the property, that would be, you know, something they would sell, you know, probably pay at the time of property sale. If they wanted to pay it off beforehand, they could pay, you know, the town may opt just to pay directly its apportionment upfront. But
And
that
the-
agreement,
But the town has the right to lien if there's no.
and if there's no payment, the town can lien. I also wanted to identify another interesting angle here. One of the abutters, the property is owned by someone who's deceased. And as far as the town and working with council has been trying to find next of kin or someone to identify. In essence, that property will be assessed the betterment, it'll be liened, and at some point, whatever happens with the property, that'll be part of the
Will the agreement include how the costs are allocated? That's something that
So it's equitable. It's the total cost of the project divided by the number of lots,
okay.
13.
Is that how it has to be, or that's how these?
That's how we've determined, it doesn't have
Okay.
to be,
But
but
that's
in
what
this
you're gonna
particular
do?
case, that's the, how it's been presented.
Okay. Is there any issue that the 60% is achieved, with the town as an abutter?
It was
Without that, you
interesting in
don't
this
need it.
case, and we talked to council, and so basically what we looked at is, out of the 13 parcels, if you looked, the signatures were of, is it 7 or 8? 8 of, so outside of the town, 11.
Eight.
It was 8 of 11 who could sign, given the deceased couldn't sign, the town was
Yeah.
sort of didn't want to put its hand on the scale, but a majority of the 11 who could signed on
And
board.
council thinks that's okay.
And they said, yes, that's okay. So the recommendation is from
Yeah.
this commission to have, and I've talked to the town manager about this, and we've been working for the greater good for not just the direct abutters, but this neighborhood to get this problem resolved. I've talked to town manager. Her only concern is whether she's the authority or the select board. And she
Yeah.
was gonna, that's to be determined to sign off on this project. So we have a few conditions that we're looking for. We got the final signature based on your recommendation for the town manager and or the select board to get over the 60%, which is the bylaw. That we will get an agreement as far as a betterment agreement in place. We will go to town meeting for borrowing authorization, putting an article to present this. And should town meeting pass it, we would then proceed with executing the agreement for the betterments and implementing, completing the actual work. Steve, what have I missed as far as the details?
In terms of process, that's the process, the betterment agreement, that will be based on legal counsel and financial, how they're borrowing and that kind of thing, so that will probably not be ready for a while.
Did we have 60%? Sorry.
No.
The last project, that was
Yes.
350,000, we had 60%, but then that fell apart.
Well, it wasn't so much it fell apart, it was just a change, and there was a lot of dynamic change with ownerships, with understanding, and that's why we revisited this to say, is there a better way to do it? Which is why we thought when the Whalens, working with their council suggested, can we clean this up? We thought that was a much better instrument. So we don't have owners who signed 2 years ago who no longer own the property and don't have any really skin in the game at this point. Right now, we have all the current ownership addressed as part of the petition.
Okay, and we didn't last time?
Last time it was, Jim, do you wanna speak to that? Yeah.
The first.
Sorry, Jim Whalen, he's.
Jim Whalen, 65 Dover Street.
Yeah.
So the first petition actually was valid. It was 60% of the homeowners at the time. At that time, it was basically the cost estimate was based off of an independent, engineering firm. We had two engineering.
That was your
firms.
plan that had like the big,
That was our original
original plan
at the
underneath,
time.
you
We
were
didn't
gonna have a
another
storage
option.
tank, yeah, okay.
So everybody at that time, 60% of the homeowners and butters signed on at that point. We brought it to town council, we brought it here to, and it was accepted. But the question then became, is this the best solution for the longer period of time? Was it the 2-year versus the
25.
25.
Yeah, we just thought we'd revisit this, because the
Right.
petitioners aren't engineers, they give us a concept. And it's really up to town and engineering to kind of look at the concept, and that was when we had the first discussion on what does it really mean, what are the implications?
Yeah.
And as time occurred, ownerships changed.
Changed.
And so that was
Petition was good, but then as we re-examined the actual solution to the problem, we realized, and working with Alan's team, that it needed to be developed further. And that the costs would also rise as a result. So we went back and we had another few meetings where Alan was very instrumental in kind of helping us get a
a firmer grip on exactly what we were dealing with. So then that's when we kind of did the second petition, and the second petition is we feel is probably as accurate as you can get for cost and how to fix the problem.
Yeah.
And and he's right, as far as the current abutters, there was one lot that was divided in that time frame. Somebody sold and a new person moved in. And I think that's pretty much.
And we
it.
also didn't have clarity at the time of the town's involvement, so we got
Yeah,
councils, you know.
The lot
opinion
was
on
there,
that.
the,
Yes,
the town lot's in the smack dab center of Darton Street.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. I think it's like, lot two A, which is right in the center. So everything kind of clarified at that
Yeah.
point.
Okay, yeah, I just went back and looked at my notes,
Yeah.
and that was
Yeah,
April
first
9th.
Petition was. never-
April 9th, where I think we pulled it.
yeah,
So anyway, I just went.
Yeah.
So sorry, just,
but it wasn't pulled, it was just.
it was deferred. It we didn't go to town
Continue.
meeting.
Correct, we didn't go to town meeting, we had a placeholder, correct, just to recall, an article pending, and then we didn't get the support, we just didn't move the article. But go ahead, I'm sorry, Dave.
Can I just quick questions?
Yeah.
Even though 60% people signed the petition, does everybody in the neighborhood, all the abutters
13.
pay?
The 13th.
Yes,
Whether or not you signed the petition.
That's correct.
You're gonna be.
that's correct.
Right.
It was, the bylaw was intended and understood that you're not gonna get unanimous support in any neighborhood.
Right,
And so it was deliberately and strategically said, if we have 60% of,
yeah,
then that assessment will be, the benefit will be assessed to all of those who see the benefit and improvement.
right, okay, great, and
Yeah.
let me ask you, so when I go to town meeting next spring, as a regular taxpayer who doesn't live in your neighborhood, what's the cost to me here of voting for this, of passing this?
There isn't,
Sure.
yeah, the idea is that there isn't a cost to you, but you understand there's a process.
Right,
This is what the process
no, it
is.
sounds great.
Yeah, and it's
done.
a good tool to help a neighborhood that has, doesn't have the benefit, they predate a lot of zoning. This is a special bylaw in a special place called Concord that doesn't exist in many other communities in Massachusetts.
But last question is, what's the word is escaping me, how is this setting up precedent for future, any kind of future?
It's already
situation?
been done. This bylaw this tool has been exercised before in this neighborhood.
So exercising, doing this.
There's no
we'll
precedent.
Have no, we can.
No, other than it allows people to understand yes, this is a tool. If some other area of White Pond has a similar interest, they
Mhm.
could sort of follow the same process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you, sorry.
One
thanks.
question on the definition, right? So the bylaw calls them temporary repairs.
Yes,
And this
We've
is
had
the
this
10-year or 20, so these are I just was curious why.
I had the
that's okay.
same thing when I first looked at it,
Yeah.
but basically, we've done reclaim, with this tool before.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and we've passed this by council,
Council's okay, and
Yes.
it was a 10-year thing, temporary.
yes.
So the borrowing is for the entire cost of the project. That 189,000, does that include debt service or debt services?
That's the question I was asked before, and that's the cost of the project, so that's what I was saying, debt service will be added on depending on the borrowing.
So the cost of the project plus debt service will be apportioned to
Yeah,
Should be the total cost,
of which the town will have a piece of that.
yes.
Okay.
Did we have more to go through?
No, so that was really the mechanics. Again, this has been a long process, I think
Yeah. Years.
I wanted to sort of, not have the petitioners have to explain
No,
the mechanics,
That's great.
which is really what we've been here to do.
okay. Did you have anything else you want us to know?
No, I think that's,
Do you guys
Oh.
have more questions?
No, I feel like, and we walked it this summer. I feel like
Yeah.
I've got this down.
Okay.
yeah.
We're being asked to approve, which basically bringing an item to town meeting, correct?
Yeah,
Is
there's, I
that the
think there's
next
some
step?
language. that,
Yeah,
you
does
know,
someone want to
people
make a motion?
I can make it. Okay, I, Gretchen Roebuck, hereby make a motion to make temporary repairs to Darton Street a publicly traveled private way as requested by petition submitted to the commission on February of 2024 and updated in November 2025 in accordance with a bylaw entitled, quote, Private Ways in White Pond Watershed Temporary Repairs, end quote. Advancement of this work shall be conditioned as detailed in a memorandum submitted to the Public Works Commission by the Director of Public Works dated November 6, 2025.
Do you have a second?
Second,
Was there anyone online that had comments?
No, I didn't see any hands up. Yeah.
Did you have a comment?
He
You
made
did,
it.
yeah.
He made it.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
That was unanimous. All right, thank you.
Good.
Thanks for all that
Good
work.
job.
That was a long.
Yeah, well, I think there's a real benefit, you know, the bylaw worked, but it was, you know, take some time,
Sure, it took some time. It's all worth it in the end.
yeah.
All right.
Is there some learning out of this process that can be captured so that next time
Only these guys. These are.
some neighbor, somebody has an issue? Is there
Well,
any,
I think the precedent is, you know, we have everything recorded, documented, the process.
cause you did so much work. You
Yeah.
all did so much
Well, I
work.
think what was interesting, Dave, is the stormwater component was a very, you know, unusual, you know, this was, you know, kind of like talk about the in-law apartment on the house, the in-law apartment ate my house. This is, the stormwater was the primary,
Right.
you know, sort of challenge, which is unique. And, you know, this, even in this situation, that neighborhood, there aren't many others like it.
Mm.
So I think it's,
Okay.
you know, is it informative? Yes, but not to the degree that stormwater would be the same
Okay.
challenge.
One other quick question. So this project, when it sort of is added to the list of projects that Public Works has in their list of projects, right? But it doesn't compete for resources.
No.
It competes for staff time.
Yes, but that's what the bylaw was intended to, it
Right.
understood that there was this need to support a neighborhood that really couldn't, they don't have an HOA, but
understand.
yes, there will be steps.
There's competition for staff
Correct.
time, not for financial. resources.
Correct, that's correct.
Good point. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
That's-
Okay, we'll move on to D5, which is the DCR Walden Reservations Private Utility in the Public Way. That,
Okay,
Yeah.
Steve Dukran will
Steve's
present
presenting.
this. I don't know if we have anyone from DCR on the line.
He is online.
Yes,
I'm on.
Okay,
Thank you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
thank you.
Well done, guys.
You guys so much.
Alright,
Good
sure.
that you feel, Bill.
Oh, great.
guys.
This is great. Thank you.
I'm sorry,
We can start, yeah.
yeah, we can start, Steve, so.
Yeah, Steve Ripon, Town Engineer. This is a change to an item that was approved before. This commission approved the placement of a sewer in the public right of way. It was a pre-existing sewer and we did it, after the fact. We brought to the commission's attention that it should be approved. And, it was noted in that approval that any change
Mhm.
in the sewer will have to come back for reapproval. So this is governed by a bylaw called the private digging of public roads. May have the name wrong, but essentially, if anyone wants to put a private amenity within the public street, they have to get approval through this commission, and then they would own the amenity and be responsible for its maintenance. So this one is essentially a change. The change is to place a manhole within the right of way, but within the sidewalk. This should have no impact on the street, which was paved in the last couple of years. So it's that simple. We've looked at it. They have no other option because immediately the back of the sidewalk, it slopes quite steeply, and placing a manhole on that slope, having to access it for maintenance purposes, would be very difficult. So they've met the criteria for having this in the public right of way. We recommend approval.
Okay. Does anyone have questions? This seems like a pretty straightforward.
Think so. Where's,
Request.
is this the beach? Is this the state park?
Facility, yes.
And who's putting the,
Yeah, so the beach has a bathhouse amenities building on the shore. And if you're familiar, it's obviously a kettle pond, you have to go down the hill. Their only wastewater solution, and this dates back decades, is to have a leaching area, because it's not served by, you know, town sewer, on the other side of
The parking lot.
the,
where the parking lot is.
main road. And they installed at one point it's a low pressure pump system that would pump up and then leach over there. When we identified some of the improvements that they were doing back, you know, in 2000, 2001, yeah.
It's
22.
when they started.
21.
120, yeah, so for the improvements, we identified, well, this utility it's a private utility, it's in the public way. We have a, you know, a way of approving that, but you haven't gone through the process, so retroactively, we clean that up. We don't have many of these in town, it's kind of unusual. But in this case, they're just doing an upgrade to their infrastructure. And it's in our right of way, so they're gonna own it and maintain it and be responsible, but it's gonna have an impact in our right of way, and we wanna account for it if and when we do any road work in the future, that sort of thing. So it allows us to know that it exists, understand roles and responsibilities for, you know, sort of repair, replace, it's theirs. But really it's documented.
And that's what we're approving.
That's all, you're approving a modification to that line, just for engineering purposes. So,
Okay.
Okay,
okay,
thank you.
Does anyone want to make a motion to accept?
Well, see, which one is it?
I got it right here.
D5.
This is exciting. Got it?
That's it.
I, David DeLong, hereby make a motion to approve a DCR Walden Pond State Reservations request for the modification of a previously approved private sewer service located within the public right of way, in accordance with the private digging of roads bylaw, as detailed in a letter to the Public Works Commission submitted on behalf of DCR from Zach Cardwell of Mary Ann Thompson Architects, dated November 3rd, 2025. And accompanying memorandum prepared by the Engineering Division to the Public Works Commission, dated November 4th, 2025.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great, thank you, Steve.
okay, Steve
Straightforward.
can't go anywhere yet.
Yeah, now we get the road briefing.
Get into this.
Very exciting roads program update.
Any other chair?
Yeah,
I
go-
One up, Joe. Share the screen.
New things, yes.
Getting on the record. My family just said that, I get to read it, and then.
You did so well. I'm so proud of you.
Work to my diction. By the way, I would say we need to have ChatGPT rethink that sentence.
Yeah,
That's
those are
one- that's
cumbersome.
one sentence. That's one sentence.
It's technicality, when we go back, we just want to make sure it's,
Wrote that.
Gotta Get all the
ChatGPT.
details in.
Jeez, use a period.
Did you want us?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
so let me set up this. This is our annual presentation, which we call the roads program briefing. Typically, we do it in the fall. Letting the commission know what our plans are for the coming year and how we are going to go about developing those plans. Typically get into the process for street selection and how we go about, you know, applying treatments, such as we talk a lot about PCIs, pavement condition index, and so on. This year, we want to focus on the fact that we have new funding starting this fiscal year. So our program is expanded, and so we wouldn't have Joe dwell on the technical parts of the program, and we'll talk more about how we're going to implement this new funding.
Okay.
As in terms of also addressing some of the safety needs out there, some of the additional work that we will do with the pavement management. Now, I want to make sure that everyone understands that the $25 million for the 5-year program is geared towards pavement management. You know, the pavement management program is a standard program by most communities that use the technology that's available. And it follows an ASTM, which is a national standard for evaluating the pavement and applying treatments and so on. So it's something that, it's not subjective. It's what I call true asset management. You've seen the term used asset management.
Mhm.
This is one asset of the roadway infrastructure. So it's really a pavement asset management program. So I'll have Joe jump right into it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Joe Cormier,
Yeah.
for anyone who hasn't met me. I'm the project manager for kind of implementing these road pavement management projects. So just some of the topics we're gonna go over that Steve kind of introduced already. I'm gonna touch upon the current or this past season's road projects, which is some of them are still underway. Our methodology behind our pavement management program, kind of the what, why, and when of implementing these projects. Gonna go over the 5-year plan that this new funding is going to fund through FY 26 through FY 30, and then the development of our 26 roads projects. That's gonna 26 projects kind of go into 2027 as well, but I'll get into that. So our current 2025 road projects consisted of full depth reclamation and varying depths of mill and overlays. We conducted the mill and overlays on the streets listed here, Main Street in West Concord, Lawsbrook Road, Barrett's Mill Road, and then we did full depth reclamation on Ripley Hill Road, Silver Hill Road, Crestbrook Road, and Turning Mill. And then we also did some preservation work as well. So we did about a little over 3 miles of fog sealing in town, which is a somewhat new treatment, preservation treatment that we started doing a few years ago. We're just spraying rejuvenating oil on top of the asphalt to kind of retain its newer pavement
Integrity, maybe?
integrity characteristics. Yeah.
You said here that it's different than the fog sealing is different than the micro surfacing. So what's micro surfacing versus fog sealing?
So fog sealing is it's an oil that's actually sprayed on top of the asphalt. So asphalt's actually like people think it's a rigid element, but it's actually flexible. So as it degrades, it kind of gets rigid, it starts to crack. So the oil just kind of rejuvenates that and allows it to flex and not crack. The microsurfacing is actually a cement type product that's laid on top of the asphalt. It's about 3/8 of an inch thick. And it's a wearing surface to protect the surface of the road.
Okay.
So fog sealing, you wouldn't even notice it's really applied on it. Where microsurfacing is actually a layer that gets applied onto the road and it stays there for the service life.
Really quick question, were these streets that you worked on, were they based on the priorities established by the pavement quality index study? Were they streets that showed up as needing the most work or this kind of work?
Yeah. So I'll get into that in a few more slides. And when I kind of talk about the methodology of our pavement management, it kind of it describes why they were selected, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, and the treatments that they got as well. So this slide here, I just wanted to kind of showcase that the pavement management program it involves more than just paving. There's other aspects that we either need to address, because if we don't, it'll lead to a faster deterioration of the road. There's some mandates that we have to meet for ADA compliance when we redo a road and we're using state funding, and even when we're using town funding. There's some mandates too that you have to make it ADA compliant. So there's some drainage work that we've done on Ripley Hill Road and Silver Hill Road primarily. There's some curbing work that we did on Main Street for a couple reasons. So curbing is a element that kind of protects the sidewalk from vehicles, and it kind of delineates the edge of the road better. So here on Main Street, we had cars kind of circumventing around cars that were trying to take a left turn onto Silver Hill Road.
Old Stone.
Old Stowe, sorry. Yep.
Hmm.
So cars were kind of jumping the curb because it was, the curbing was buried and they were getting closer to the sidewalk. So we decided to replace some of it and install new curbing there, to try to prevent that. And then the other element that we evaluated was the pavement markings. We evaluated these on our arterial streets. So Losbrook Road and Main Street. And our goal was to try to evaluate the lane widths, as well as our crosswalk material. So we're always trying to create like a traffic calming measures in the street, especially in areas where we get a lot of complaints or we get input from PD that we know it's an issue. So we hired an engineering consultant to evaluate specifically Main Street in West Concord, to see what could be done with our lane widths to try to reduce those. Studies are showing that reduced lane widths slow traffic. So we were able to reduce those slightly, while still accommodating the high truck traffic that Main Street sees, the busing with the adjacent Thoreau School, and the vehicle count, which all play a role in lane widths and what you can have for an overall width.
Joe, let me talk a little bit further on this. So there were requests when the street was paved from some residents about trying to reduce the widths that they've experienced in other communities. And we agree that there is a certain amount of speeding. At times the volumes are high, the vehicle counts are high. And so that's why we went out and we talked to at least 3 engineering firms to get, their opinion on what should be done here. And it's important, Mr. Jeff Collins talked about earlier, the intersection and the need for bicycle infrastructure. In the case, I think he's referring to bicycle lanes, which when you have a curved location, you need at least 5 feet. That's MUTCD, federal highway and state design requirement. But out here in West Concord, we wanted to see what's the minimum lane width we can have. And so each engineer, all engineering firms came back with, they wouldn't go less than 11 feet of, because of the truck traffic and the high volumes. And the issue with the truck traffic, so if you have 2 trucks passing each other and the lanes are too narrow, you've got to have mirrors hitting each other. Yeah. And so we have to stand by some standard. There might be slight deviations, but we can't go too far off. Otherwise, we will end up with having a problem that didn't exist. All right. So.
Yeah, and then the other thing is we replaced our typical pavement markings with thermoplastic on our crosswalks and stop bars. Thermoplastic has a longer life. It's more reflective. So in our long periods of time where we can't paint over the winter, this material is lasting longer. In addition, we're doing a pavement inlay at one of the crosswalks by West Street to make it more apparent for when pedestrians are crossing. So I just wanted to highlight some other road projects that aren't necessarily related to pavement management that the engineering division is working on. They're in various stages of development. The Main Street and Baker Avenue intersection improvement project, the Spencer Brook culvert replacement project, which is a stormwater improvement project related to a culvert that's failing. The Walden Street sidewalk. This is a project that we're installing approximately 3/4 of a mile of a new sidewalk along Walden Street from Magnolia to Bristol's Hill Road, Bristol's Hill. And then the Main Street and Pine Street intersection project. This is going to be geared towards pedestrian improvements. If you've been out there, we skipped over that intersection this past summer. So we can make the necessary improvements and not impact pavement. So we're not paving it in the intersection twice. And then we have the Silver Hill Road Phase 2 resurfacing project, which is a pavement management geared project.
And just highlight, the Walden Street new sidewalk is grant funded.
Yeah, it's a complete street.
Yes.
Yeah, project.
Is there a sidewalk going in between the high school entrance on Thoreau Street to Walden Street? I mean, they've got cones there and there's every single house along there says, slow down. There's people walking here. So I figured because of the cones that, I mean, they've demarcated an area that's for pedestrians walk. And I figured that we were putting in a sidewalk along there because it stops at the high school entrance. There's a sidewalk and on the other side, there's no sidewalk. Is there a reason for that? I always figured that's what I keep hearing the Walden. I figured that they were gonna have that little chute come around. It's probably just a couple hundred yards, which is probably a lot. of money.
It's pretty significant. It's not funded, but it's one of the requests that we have out there that we'll have to evaluate and put through the program.
Okay,
But the cones, I do not know who's responsible for the cones. It's probably the resident.
it's a resident
There, yeah.
with all their signs. Slow down. There's a stop sign ahead. Kids here, you know.
Yeah, it's one of the challenges we have where there is an interest to extend sidewalks. There's a legitimate, we've got this concern, but it has to compete with all of the other interests and concerns, so. That's one of the things that we're trying to address when we deal with some of these pedestrian and cycling needs. That's part of the process we had with the joint meeting with the Public Works Commission, Select Board, and TAC. So those are to be determined, but no project, that isn't a project
That isn't
on a
project.
list yet.
It's made me think like, oh yeah, this is
That's right.
coming.
It is an interest, it just hasn't been sort of put into a queue. We're
Okay.
trying to be very clear, Public Works, we do projects and, we're still in the process of working with the vetting of, well, what constitutes, when does it become a real project with design and construction? That hasn't been on our radar yet, other than there's an interest in identified.
Andrea.
Can I just clarify that the Linda Neiman $59 drive, I'm one of the co-coordinators of Mothers Out Front. The signage was part of an effort the Mothers Out Front did with Upland Road to get people to slow down. The cones were put out at our request by the police because people were walking on the road, but now unfortunately people are still walking on the road with cones. And because people come from Walden over there, kids and folks cut through the Hapgood, the Fairland area as well. And also those residents, obviously they have to walk their kids to school along that, goat path or desired path.
Okay. Thank you.
Quick question. Steve, you talked about road widths and bike lanes. The white striping on the end, those aren't full, what do we call those?
Fog lines,
Hmm?
they're fog lines.
The fog lines?
And several different in fog lines, shoulder lines.
Those aren't bike lanes. I mean, bikers use those,
Right.
but those aren't bike lanes.
So for it to qualify as a bike lane, if you have curb, I said earlier,
Oh, yeah.
you need 5 feet.
Yeah.
If
right.
you don't have curb, you can go with 4 feet. But if you officially designate a lane as a bike lane, you gotta sign it as such, stripe it as such. Have a beginning, have an end, you gotta tell the bicycle, here's a bike lane.
But what those are called? They're called fog.
Right. Yeah, but
Line.
just to give you the full explanation.
Yeah.
What we try to achieve in Joe's program is to try and reduce the lane width as much as we can. And get a shoulder that's usable for walking if you don't have a sidewalk, or biking. It may not be the full bike lane width.
But there's two things. It also reduces potential speed as,
No,
so it's got that's the primary focus. And then the secondary benefit is it creates an avenue that can be used, by cyclists a little more safer if they're gonna use it anyway.
Got it. Thank you.
So to get into the pavement management methodology, Dave, this might answer your question, with the what, where, and when do we, how do we select these streets? When do we, when do we apply a treatment? What treatment do we apply? And we do this by surveying all of our streets, obtaining this pavement condition index data. That we use and we input it into our street scan database. And depending on what the type of deterioration, the density or prevalence of that deterioration, kind of, it points us in a direction of a treatment that would be feasible here. So that kind of tells us what treatment would be good. But as far as prioritizing that goes, this deterioration curve here kind of shows our method of doing that, I guess. So when a street's in good condition, it has a PCI of 100. You know, it's up to the top left of that graph, and then it deteriorates at varying rates until it's in a failed condition. But you can see here that the first 75% of its life, its condition drops by 40%. And that's represented by the $1 to repair or maintain that road in good condition. But if that repair is deferred later, kind of like where you defer maintenance to your house or your car, further down the road, that repair is going to cost you more. So if you wait another, 5-6 years, depending on what that deterioration is, it could cost you 6 to 8 times more later on to bring that condition back up. So our method here is to apply maintenance preservation techniques early on in the road's life to reduce those costs. But then also we have to address these roads that are in failing condition as well. So it's kind of a holistic approach throughout the whole scale service life of the street. So to kind of give you guys just a snapshot of these varying conditions of the street and their related PCIs. So each one of these examples, we have a different treatment in our toolbox that we can deploy on these streets to maintain them to some degree. The top left, and then as it goes right and down, the PCI decreases, and you can see the varying deterioration there. So our preservation techniques would be kind of applied to the top row of deteriorations, and the second row there would be like your mill and overlays and your full depth reconstructions.
And these are not pictures from Concord. I'm
No,
like,
no,
where- I-
no,
I'm
they're
like,
not.
Matt, where- New Hampshire, where? Okay, it's like, never been on that street.
Yeah, right.
Picking on New Hampshire?
So we hired Stantec, an engineering consultant, to evaluate our pavement management program, and figure out what kind of funding we would need over the next 5 years to increase our PCI to a acceptable level. And part of that was looking at surrounding communities and what is an acceptable PCI level. And it was determined that around 85 to 90 PCI was kind of our objective goal. And looking at our network in its current condition, it was determined that $25 million was needed over the next 5 years to reach that goal. An additional $2.5 million was also dedicated to safety improvement projects over this 5-year program. Part of their evaluation looked at sidewalks as well. This funding isn't going to cover major sidewalk repairs or installations of new ones, but it was good to know what that need is. And the goals of our pavement management program, like I said, were mid to high 80s. And then with this increased funding as well, it overall reduces our maintenance over the long-term range. So looking over 10 years, our maintenance costs after this 5-year funding is about $1.5 to $2 million.
Per year?
Per year. Yep.
Which is very
Really
sustainable
good,
versus,
really good.
it's the whole, we've had this whole discussion with town meeting and town
Right.
vote as far as get them to a condition that they can be more preservation than reclamation. And,
How much have we been spending before the last, say, 5 years, before this?
well, we had the big project on the Cambridge Turnpike.
Yeah.
That sort of,
Bracket that.
that was within the last, maybe finished 5 years ago. And that sort of dwarfed all the other projects we're
Wow.
spending, and so we're playing a little bit of catch up because that was so expensive, but.
I do have the
Okay.
average number, so within, between town's appropriation through capital planning and chapter 90, we're spending an average of $2.5 million per year for 5 years.
So if we do this in 5 years, that number, that should be very sustainable and you should be able to get it from town, get it funded each year, a number to keep.
We won't need to borrow, yes.
Right, right. I know the question Christine is asking is thinking about so is this what we can judge? Is this one of the ways we can judge your
Yeah,
performance?
this is a metric,
In 5
Yeah.
years?
a metric,
Right.
yes,
Right, Christine?
That's right.
on pavement.
I wanna see on pavement, right,
I-
right. And I want, I wanna see something that tells me by year.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So I'm not waiting till the end.
Yeah, no,
I
no,
wanna see
right.
progress.
We don't wait to the end. Every year we actually do in our annual report, we'll include a table of what's our PCI
Right.
at the end of that,
Right.
calendar year, pretty much, right, Steve?
Well, so what we do have is every 3 years, we have the firm Street Scan come out and do a
Yes.
survey. So if we change that every year, it means some extra spending. There may be alternative ways to get a PCI that we're exploring. That's.
Yeah. Or you could simply say, just something that says, if this was the goal, right? So they gave you a static goal whenever they did the last study.
Yeah.
And you can say, based on what they told us 5 years ago, this is the percentage that we are complete. I mean, it doesn't have to be
Oh, I get.
That's right.
complicated, right? But it needs to be a way for us, the the commissioners, as well as the town, who can understand what's the progress that we're
Right.
making against the goal, right?
Right.
That's important. And I think the issue of prioritization is gonna be important as well, so it's complicated, but I don't want you to, so I'm not saying I don't wanna, argue the validity of the complication. I understand it's complicated when you look at the factors that you put in. So you have the PCI, you have the cost, you have utility, you have the input of the highway, you have a lot of different factors. But that's pretty complicated to explain to somebody. So I think there has to be, there must be some factors that weigh more than others as a way to explain, this is how we're going through the town, this is how we're prioritizing it. So I think that's those two things, thinking about how you're gonna communicate to this commission as well as to the public are important.
Yeah.
And I know it's not easy, but I think we gotta work on that.
Well, the
But
other
how
thing-
are we making those decisions?
And it underscores the challenge we're gonna have not to get diverted from the intent of the pavement.
That's
And
right.
again, what we talked about is when it starts getting literally watered down with stormwater improvements or sidewalks that weren't, all these things, we gotta look at what those cost. Why, that's why we have $25 million for pavement. 2.5 for the additional, and I'll say 2.5 is a significant investment for the safety measures, which are, really important, and that's part of what the whole borrowing is. We wanna see some improvements on that as well. But yeah, we gotta make the case and be consistent with the approach of what we're spending for pavement.
And how you prioritize.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be a question as well.
Yeah, so the prioritization. Kind of laid out, part of Stantec's evaluation was laying out where we're going. With these projects, what streets are we doing, what treatments are we applying? So part of their evaluation was putting together a 5-year resurfacing plan. Which I think tells the public somewhat of where we're going, what to expect. So this map has been posted on our public webpage. I posted a link on the presentation if this gets posted on our website.
Can I ask you, what is purple, what is blue, what is
Yeah.
yellow, what is red? There's no key on it.
It's not,
Yeah, so it's just a snapshot to show you the streets that we're going to touch.
Yeah, but is a red, like, that's a complete completely redone? I mean, I always consider red, like, it has to be completely
Bad.
bad.
So I believe it's broken out by year, and that's what the.
Oh, it's by year.
That's what the color means.
Okay, so what
yeah.
is, so year is
So it's
first year?
I don't know. I'm not,
Okay, I just-
I'm not sure, but it is.
Can you put it on the website?
Put
It
it,
is, it is on the website,
It's on
yeah,
the
so
website.
it's an interactive map where you can go on our website and you can click on different street segments.
my suggestion is when you put this map up, you put that key on it, from now
Okay.
on, that's your clip art, and you put it everywhere, so the key's always with it.
Okay. Yeah, It definitely makes sense.
I
So,
thought it would be too hard to read, that's why we didn't put a key, the legend.
Yeah, there's a good little,
there's
room,
Yeah, you can figure it out, huh?
yeah.
No, okay.
So, Joe, essentially, am I looking at your paving prioritization decisions in the different colors? You've basically prioritized what you're gonna do over the next 4 or 5 years.
5 years, yeah,
Just based on paving,
just
Yes.
based on payment, yeah,
Okay.
yep.
you know.
So it takes in no other real considerations,
Right.
utility coordinations and things like that.
So it will change.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to stick to this as close as possible. Obviously, there's, you know, some winters roads deteriorate at vastly different rates than others. So our plan is to go through yearly and relook at this. So we have our street scan data that we update and apply a annual deterioration to, assumed. But before we go out and implement these projects and, we go and do field verifications on them to say, okay, the data that we have that we've assumed over the past 2 years is true and accurate. So, you know, before we go into it.
I just understand, because for all the words, prioritization is a confusing word, because the prioritization based on the road paving, and then 2 slides later, you'll talk about prioritization based on road safety. And at some point, they could come together. So for
Mhm.
example, you hit this prioritization, you could change that. You have, based on some high priority road safety, it might move a street higher up, I mean, some interaction between the two.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So this is strictly our pavement management prioritization.
No, I understand, and
Yeah,
that's what the 25 million is intended to do.
yeah,
But since you have to pave those streets over time, it could be, these priorities might change based on road safety issues.
integration and identification of, yes, certain safety improvement projects. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Paul, it's important to know that pavement is the bus, you know, it's. Yeah, and then not the caboose, you know, whatever you wanna say, but I think when you look at it, it's also important to know. Is it micro surfacing or a reclaim, you know, can be a factor of, well, what kind of improvements could be included in this major construction? Significant variations in cost for the projects, and I think that also will inform. I think that's what we're looking to do, is where are these identified areas of interest for safety? And how do they dovetail with this area, which is just driven by the model? And I think that's what we're gonna be looking for. Where is there a connection? Where's the opportunity for a, you know?
I understand, I agree,
That's the
everybody,
concept.
everybody agrees that,
Yeah.
let's drive the bus here.
Yeah.
Just asking, could the prioritization change with the high priority safety improvements, since you're gonna have to pave those streets anyway? Put it up, move it up for a year.
Yeah, I think there's
It's
some
something to think
flexibility,
about.
yes.
Yeah.
But it would be at the margins, right? I mean, it shouldn't change the major plan. That's, I mean, otherwise we're always,
Well, it's like to change this plan 2026 to 2030, but it might move things within that time frame.
well,
Yeah.
if it changes it by year, it's changing it. So I don't know. I would hope it doesn't change it that much.
Cause I mean, I think too, it depends on the scope of the safety improvement project, once it's identified, you know, how much
Exactly.
impact is it gonna have
Exactly,
on
yeah.
safe, on the road surface?
Yeah.
Cause you know, a large portion of any project that happens in the road is put towards paving. You know, so if it makes sense to move stuff around to accommodate a road safety project, yeah, I think that could be done.
So, let me just, something that Alan started talking about, it depends on the treatment. If you remember when we presented the modeling for developing this 5-year program, we talked about different bands. What you don't want happen is if currently the street that's going to get a microsurfacing treatment, is left for a year or two, and it drops down into much more costlier treatment,
Right.
now you're gonna blow your program.
Right.
So what we can do for safety projects, say we have a,
I don't want to change it very
Right.
much.
so if you
I
have
want
a,
to get it done.
if you have a corridor that has a safety project, like Main Street of West Concord, we skipped over the intersection of Main and Pine and continue the paving. We can come back and do that project separately. That may be one of the better options for us if there's a major safety project along a corridor to be paved.
Well, the good news is it will be on our radar. And that's what's important. It's never been on a collective radar to know that, that's the whole benefit of this, capturing all of the requests so people can see where are they? And, including engineering or designing or looking at a corridor. So that's gonna help.
I just have the bad habit of looking ahead of the power.
So,
When I look at Stantec's prioritization tool. That's not this, it's a different. It's a different tool.
Want to help us stay on time.
so we'll go, we'll hit that. Go ahead, Joe, you're on. Should I go
No,
back?
no, you're good there.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of an overview of how we plan on implementing this 5-year plan. So we're gonna start off with multiple 2-year contracts. This will give us the ability to potentially get more, multiple paving contractors in town. So it's potential to have multiple crews working in town at once to get more work done. We're hoping to reduce the amount of contracting and bidding year to year, to start the construction season sooner. It's a short season, so any additional time we can get is obviously a benefit. And then this gives us some flexibility in reprioritizing streets if there is utility conflicts or utility needs, or underlying issues, stormwater issue, infrastructure that we have to address. So it does give us a little bit of ability to push streets or bring streets up if they deteriorate and our maintenance crews can't handle the maintenance over the winter. So in addition to the construction contracts, we plan on getting some consultant help to help with preparing these bid packages, as well as helping with the construction and inspection. Our funding's increasing quite a bit, so the amount of work that we're gonna be doing is going to increase significantly. And then with the engineering help, we're looking to increase or enhance quality control and quality assurance. So this is kind of the step-by-step process on what we're going to be, or have been and continue to do throughout the winter until we get these construction contracts out to bid. So as I said before, we have our street scan data. We had a survey of our streets done a couple of years ago. So we have to go through that and update the PCIs for all of our street segments to reflect the deterioration that's occurred since last year. We have to go through and look at our construction costs, our unit pricing, to make sure that's reflected in our estimates. And then our overall budget, we know what that is, but we have to break that out into our engineering costs, administration costs, and our cost for police details. So we have to do that so we know exactly what our costs are for construction, what that remaining construction is. And this street selection bullet here is we know what our 5-year plan is. So with the 2-year contracts, we plan to start reviewing streets, looking at the first 2 years in that 5-year plan. Once we do that, we're gonna do on-site investigation to review road condition and treatment selection to make sure it's a viable option, which we suspect it will, but we do see some variation in some of the preservation treatments mostly. Inspecting, upgrading and ponding flooding issues on those streets so we can address those and create designs to fix those before you go into construction. Plan to evaluate curbing, sidewalk, crosswalk, signs, and shoulder needs. If there's any deficiencies, we want to include that and try to capture those when we're there doing the paving work. We have utility coordination. And then typically, historically, we come back and we present the street list and the projects to you guys at some point over the winter.
Is there a natural time or point where you provide a program update so Christine can make sure that you're on? That I know,
Right.
I know the bosses, that you're on.
When?
Cause I just had this thought that, suddenly you have all this money, you got 5 years, there's just human nature. is a
No,
little
these
bit-
guys are on top of it.
You just have to keep the pressure on yourself, to.
So I
There-
think the answer is, a year from now, we'll be given another briefing and we'll recap what we did in the past year.
Hmm.
Because it's at the end of the season, right now,
Yeah.
we know what
I don't
accomplish.
wanna wait a year. I wanna know before that what your plan is for for the year.
Oh, no, we'll give it a plan.
Okay.
But I mean, in terms of what was being accomplished,
Okay, fine.
what's been built.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you
this
said
is the
over the winter.
preamble to the plan.
Right.
It hasn't been presented.
Right, but that will
Yeah.
get presented in the winter.
In a winter.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
But Dave was asking about
Like in March.
giving you
here.
a performance measure.
Okay,
That's a year from now.
How much earlier will you be able to send out bids than you usually would?
We're shooting for the end of January, early February, so
That's months earlier, right?
yes.
Well,
Mr.
usually you're doing it in, August. You know, so. And the other thing is, there's a benefit of the 2-year contract, when you talk about flexibility. The contracts are unit costs, and we can work with schedules based on the town's best interest. They're gonna mobilize, we'll work with them, so there is some flexibility of, adjusting, but only if it's kind of in our interest. So. All right, we gotta move.
So we can all cover this one.
on contracting then, so you had, there was some movement right in the financial offices, and now there's a new CFO, so have
Yeah.
you had any conversations with them yet on
Yeah.
procurement and making sure they've got the infrastructure to support you on the contracting side?
We are routinely talking with the procurement group, and we're still kind of partnering on, our projects and initiatives, and I will tell you, and this is kind of exciting, we have a weekly, division head meeting that we invite the procurement person to. And our first order of business are, what are the projects that we're identifying? What's in the works? Where are they in procurement? And what do we anticipate? So there's no surprises. We're in a 3rd week of this, and I think it's working really well. And this is obviously gonna be one that we're kind of excited about.
Right.
Like many things, we're going through some of the early growing pains of sort of the needs, expectations, but I think we're making progress. And this is certainly something which, right now, we're talking about, with finances, the borrowing schedule. That's kind of the priority, and so that gives them an inclination of how much and when. We do know that we made a commitment of about $12 million or something over 2 years, but it's gonna be spread over 2 years. And so we're already communicating that with finance, so we're starting to have the right sort of conversations. So, Joe, we got 5 minutes.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
there's one more slide, we kind of already touched upon this.
Okay.
It's just the need to coordinate our pavement management program with our road safety, projects. These projects kind of be broken out into like larger safety improvement projects, and then kind of road elements that we can kind of address, and evaluate as we go through and develop our paving program. So we're gonna kind of lean on the prioritization tool that Stantec's currently developing, to kind of identify these larger road safety projects that are gonna need some sort of design vetting, and a longer timeline to develop and implement, versus these road safety elements that we plan to identify, now over the winter going into our paving program. So the need to get these pavement management projects done, is kind of the driving force here. We don't want to delay, because of some design conflict. So yeah, that's kind of how we're planning on attacking it. So just some of the elements here that we plan to evaluate: signage, pavement markings, existing and new, pedestrian visibility at crosswalks, ADA accessibility, narrowing of lanes, shortening of crosswalks, and the installation of flashing beacons. We plan to put a consultant on this to evaluate these, so we can incorporate some of these elements and improvements, where they're lacking now.
All right, excellent. That's good news. That is the part everyone's waiting for.
Mhm. And it hasn't firmed up, but we're getting closer, and we certainly hear, and Paul, your point of clarity is key. You know, we're not quite there to present, but we'll be regrouping with our internal working group before we are, gonna go out publicly and start sharing, this is the tool.
Yeah, I mean, the clarity is, the highest priority is paving.
Yep.
But how does the other parts fit into that?
That's right.
How do you mix those two?
And I'm really excited that we're gonna see some safety improvements that have been long overdue. We know that. We finally have funding, and that's exciting,
It is.
so.
Do commissioners have any questions or?
No.
Public?
I
Okay.
have a question. Lindsay Nino, $59 drive. The consultant that's going to be helping with this, will this be Stantec? And then are you also, like, is this part of the whole flow chart that was presented and, is there going to be like temporary test measures that will be put in place that can be done quickly that are low cost and to evaluate like what is possible?
So, we'll have two consultants on the job. One will be IMEG for the preparation of the plans, the review of the streets for condition, selecting the treatments and so on. And Stantec will be used to do the identification of the safety needs. So yes, so the answer is Stantec. Secondly, the major projects, because if the way Joe laid it out here, the ones that need substantial design and so on, those will go to the flow chart that's still under development, to identify and select them for design and so on. And then for the smaller projects, like, narrowing of travel lanes and so on, there's some coordination, but because they will be numerous, I don't think each one would necessarily go through that flow chart. The engineer might say, okay, if you're paving here, can you stripe a 10.5-foot lanes? And then we'll proceed with that, or here's a crosswalk that can use some more enhancements to make pedestrians more visible. We don't need to go to the flow chart for that, because it'll be too cumbersome to put every little improvement through that flow chart.
And can I ask one final question? So going back to Paul's question about prioritization, how are you going to do that and who will make the final decision? Because whatever you choose, people are gonna be upset, right? And so like, who's gonna own it and be the person to, say that these are the order in which we're going to do these things?
We're still working out the details, however, I think it's getting clearer and clearer that, Public Works and staff continue to focus on when there's a determination that a project is going to be viable. We know on the pavement condition, that's going to be Public Works exclusively. We're not looking for external. When it comes to the safety issues, we believe TAC is going to have, a stronger voice and opportunity. And really, we're looking at the allocation of that $2.5 million is there's going to be some back and forth. But ultimately, we're expecting TAC will be at the table to help advance those initiatives that they're hearing or believe are important, with an understanding this is a budget, just like Public Works deals with the budget on the pavement. So we're getting there, but we're not quite crystallized, but and Paul, I don't know if you have any thoughts on you want to share, so that's kind of consistent with what you've heard to date.
Too many half-baked thoughts that I want to share.
Okay.
I mean, there are two prioritization efforts, and they have to figure out how to merge those.
Mhm.
You have your list here. Let's say TAC comes up with their top three. Okay, well, is there merging there? Or is not? So I mean,
That's right. And that's part of the
have to
discussion.
work that merging out.
Exactly. And the public will be aware of what that looks like, that's the other important part of what we're doing.
Can I add, so Stantec has been given a list of existing requests as well as existing needs that were identified through studies and so on. And they start with a number of 228. There's some overlapping. They think by the time they get through sorting all those out into one list, we'll probably be down to like 100 projects. Those are the ones that will go through that tool, and obviously coordinated with the paving program. So those are what we believe we'll be seeing when we have the workflow finally figured out and be ready to present to the public, and we'll the top projects will definitely rise and will get attention through the funding and so on. The other smaller projects that will identify along the way, they'll be low cost and those that can be addressed quickly. You have to imagine, we intend to repave or resurface 12 miles of street each year. And that's a lot to have to sit and wait for a decision to be made by others. So we have to find that balance there. But certainly the major projects will go through the public vetting system.
And I think we're also trying to include some allowance for some more detailed design of some clearly identified priorities. We're not looking to reinvent wheels that have been spinning for decades, so we're hoping that we'll be able to move on some of those things. I think the community and, those who been interested will probably all support, these are areas that we've kind of have universally been identified. They're not fringe, but how quickly can we see them done would be, I expect sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So.
That process for vetting needs to be transparent, but it can't be cumbersome.
Mhm.
And that's where we're stuck. And that's what we're working on. And it's gonna take a little bit longer to work out.
Yeah, that's a fair statement, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have more questions?
Let me see, stop share so I can see what else is out, okay? Don't see anything on online.
Okay, so we made it through our
Gentlemen.
update. Thanks a lot. That's a lot of
Thank you.
great information.
Yeah, we didn't prepare a formal report for director's report.
Okay,
So we
That's
really
good.
just, figured we knew the time would be, committed to, but if there's any, we've given you a report. If you have any questions, we're certainly willing. I've got, Darren here, Russ here, Steve here, we can,
Why was this included in the packet?
just because it was provided. So the question is on the, attachment, the Walden Woods. There was a notice that went to, they've sort of broadcast this to the select board,
Yeah.
to Public Works Commission. So we want to include it as part of the packet rather than just send you something separate. But it's just for information purposes at this point.
But this is property that you use.
This is property that,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right, that's right.
So if there was a restriction put on it, that would change your ability to use it.
You would have a significant impact on our operations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if this was to go forward, we have.
Yeah, there would be, this is for information, but, I think the most important thing is they're trying to make sure that it's at least on the radar for the land use working group. If we're looking at all municipal land, so it's reasonable to say there's another interest, but no action, no discussion at this point, just wanted to be aware. They wanted you to be aware of this initiative.
okay.
Okay.
Looks like there's all the questions and comments. Any more comments? No?
Great, thank you all.
Do I have a
Thank you.
movement to adjourn?
Hi, Gretchen Urbach, hereby make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I second.
All in
Submission.
favor? Aye.
Hi. Thank you all.